It wasn't a screaming match. No doors slammed. No voices raised in anger, no thrown plates or shattered glass. It wasn't one of those explosive family fights that end in dramatic walkouts and tearful reconciliations. No, it was something far worse, quieter, colder, deliberate. It was one sentence. "No one wants you here." Jordan said it so casually, so effortlessly, like he was stating a fact instead of delivering a death blow. He didn't look at me when he said it, just sat there with his arms folded across his chest, his expression impassive. As if the moment meant nothing to him. As if I meant nothing to him. And my father? He nodded. That was it. No hesitation. No defense. No regret. Just a slow, sure nod of agreement, a quiet confirmation that I was unwanted, unnecessary, an afterthought in my own home. I think that was the worst part. Not the words, not the fact that Jordan had said them, but the silent acceptance from my father. The man who was supposed to protect me. The man who was supposed to be on my side. The man who should have cared. I waited. Maybe for a second. Maybe for an eternity. I waited for someone, anyone, to say something different, to take it back, to tell me that Jordan was being an ass, and that, of course, they wanted me here. That I mattered. But the moment stretched, an unspoken understanding settling over the room like a heavy fog. There would be no retraction. No backpedaling. No one was going to tell me I was wrong, or that Jordan didn't mean it, or that my father hadn't just agreed with him. The realization hit me like a slow-moving wrecking ball. I wasn't leaving in anger. I wasn't storming out with a vow to never return. I wasn't even sad. I was just done. I stood up. My chair scraped against the tile floor, the sound obnoxiously loud in the otherwise suffocating silence. I didn't slam my hands on the table. I didn't demand answers. I didn't look at my father again. I simply nodded once, then turned and walked away. My hands weren't shaking when I packed my bag. They should have been. I should have been crying. Should have felt something. But there was only a strange emptiness, a quiet acceptance that settled into my bones like an old, familiar ache. I wasn't running away this time. I wasn't acting out, wasn't making a scene, wasn't desperate to be heard. I was letting them have what they wanted. A duffel bag. That was all I needed. The essentials, because really, what else did I own that mattered? There was nothing tying me here. Not the childhood memories, not the old photographs in the hallway, not even the bed I had slept in since I was a kid. None of it belonged to me anymore. I slung the bag over my shoulder, stepping out into the hallway one last time. The lights in the living room still cast long, familiar shadows across the floor, but they felt different now, like a place I had never belonged in the first place. Jordan didn't look up from his phone. My father didn't move from his chair. My mother wasn't even there. Maybe that should have hurt. Maybe I should have turned back, should have demanded something, some acknowledgement that this moment meant anything to them. But all I did was exhale, long and slow, and walk toward the door. I didn't look back. Not when I stepped outside, not when the cold air bit into my skin, not even when I heard the distant murmur of voices from inside. I had spent years waiting for them to care. Tonight, I finally stopped. The night air wrapped around me as I walked, the weight of my duffel bag heavy on my shoulder. The streets were quiet, the usual hum of the city dulled by the late hour. I had no destination in mind. Nowhere planned. But I wasn't lost. I kept walking, each step taking me further away from the house that had never felt like home. I didn't check my phone. Didn't scroll through my contacts for someone to call. I just kept moving. It was strange, the feeling of leaving and knowing you wouldn't be going back. The realization that, for the first time in your life, you had nowhere to return to. It should have been terrifying. Maybe, in a way, it was. But mostly, it just felt quiet. Not the heavy, suffocating silence I had known in that house. Not the kind that made my skin itch, that made me want to scream just to hear something. No, this silence was different. It felt like peace. The wind carried the faint scent of rain, the distant sounds of life still humming from the city beyond. Streetlights buzzed overhead, casting pools of yellow onto the pavement. I could have stopped. Could have sat down on the curb, let the weight of everything settle onto me. But I didn't. Because despite everything, despite the way they had pushed me away, I was still here. Still standing. Still moving forward. And that had to mean something. It had to. Somewhere down the street, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. I wasn't ready yet. Not to face whatever came next. Not to deal with the consequences of walking away. Not to think about what this meant, what it said about my family, what it said about me. So I did the only thing I could do. I kept walking. By the time I reached my friend's apartment, my feet ached and my lungs felt raw from the cold air. The building was one of those old, slightly run-down complexes, the kind with rusting railings and doors that had seen better days. I hesitated only for a moment before knocking. It didn't take long for the door to open. And then there was Ethan. He didn't say anything at first. Just took one look at me, at the duffel bag slung over my shoulder, at the exhaustion I knew was plain on my face. And then he stepped aside. "Come in," he said. No questions, no hesitation, no judgment. Just 2 words. Just understanding. I stepped inside, the warmth of the apartment wrapping around me. The scent of takeout lingered in the air, the soft glow of a single lamp illuminating the space. Ethan didn't push for answers. Didn't ask me what happened. Didn't press for details. He just grabbed a spare blanket from the couch and tossed it to me. "You can crash here," he said. "For as long as you need." Something inside me unraveled at that. I sat down, the weight of the night pressing into my shoulders. I expected my mind to race, to be consumed by everything that had just happened. But instead, as I laid back against the couch, exhaustion finally catching up to me, I realized something. For the first time in my life, I wasn't fighting for a place to belong. And for the first time in my life, the silence didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like freedom. I woke up to a dimly lit room, the glow of a street lamp filtering through the half-closed blinds. The couch beneath me was stiff, the blanket draped over me slightly rough, but it was warm. Warmer than anywhere I'd been in a long time. For a second, I didn't move. The silence in the apartment was different from the one I had grown up in. At home, silence was suffocating, heavy with unspoken words and the weight of indifference. Here, it was light. It was peaceful. It was mine. A slow breath filled my lungs as I let my body sink into the cushions. I had walked away. Just walked away. No fights, no screaming, no grand exit. I had left them behind, and now I was here wherever here was. I turned my head slightly, glancing at the small space that belonged to my friend, Ethan. A tiny kitchen in the corner, mismatched furniture, a coffee table littered with old magazines and empty cans. It wasn't much, but it was safe. And right now, that was everything. I sat up, rubbing the sleep from my eyes. My bag was still on the floor beside the couch, untouched. Nothing stolen, nothing rummaged through. Another difference from home. The smell of coffee drifted from the kitchen. Ethan was already up, leaning against the counter with a mug in hand. He glanced at me, eyes still half-lidded from sleep. "Morning." "Morning," I said, my voice scratchy. He took a slow sip, then gestured toward the second mug sitting beside him. "Made you one." I stood, stretching out the stiffness in my limbs before making my way to the kitchen. The ceramic was warm in my hands as I lifted the cup to my lips. The first sip was bitter, but the warmth spread through me, waking me up from the inside out. "Thanks," I murmured. Ethan didn't say anything at first. He just watched me, his usual easygoing demeanor quieter than usual. "You want to talk about it?" I let out a breath that wasn't quite a laugh. "Not really." He nodded like he understood. And maybe he did. Ethan had always been that way, offering help without pushing for explanations. Giving space without making me feel like I had to fill it with excuses. I leaned against the counter, staring into my coffee. I left. That was all I said, but somehow, he got it. His brows lifted slightly. "For good?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah." There was no sympathy in his expression. No pity. Just quiet understanding. "Good," he said simply. I let out a breath, surprised at how much lighter I felt hearing that single word. The moment didn't last long. A sudden vibration in my pocket shattered the calm. I knew, even before I pulled my phone out, who it was. 17 missed calls. My chest tightened as I stared at the screen. Mom, Caroline, Dad, Richard. Even Jordan. A family that didn't want me, yet somehow, now, they were desperate. Ethan's eyes flickered toward my phone. You gonna answer that? I locked the screen without responding, setting the phone face down on the counter. No. I wanted to ignore them. Wanted to pretend they didn't exist, just like they had done to me for years. But 17 calls? That was more than just checking in. Something was wrong. I pushed the thought away. Whatever it wasn't my problem. I took another sip of coffee, savoring the quiet before the vibration started again. The sound rattled against the counter, persistent and grating. I clenched my jaw. Ethan watched me for a moment, then sighed, setting his own mug down. You know they're not gonna stop. I didn't answer. Another buzz. Another. A bitter laugh escaped me. They never called this much when I lived there. They call when they need something, Ethan said, no hesitation. And there it was. That was the truth of it, wasn't it? I had spent my entire life waiting for them to notice me, waiting for them to care. And now, after I had finally walked away, they were suddenly blowing up my phone? Why now? Because they need something. I exhaled sharply and snatched the phone off the counter. Ethan said nothing as I unlocked the screen, scrolling through the missed calls. Then I saw the messages. The first was from my mother. Caroline, you're being dramatic. Come home. A cold laugh escaped me. Dramatic? Dramatic? That was rich, coming from them. The second was from my father. Richard, enough of this nonsense. Stop acting like a child. Right. Because standing up for myself was childish. Because choosing to leave after they told me to was immature. Then there was another message from my mother. Caroline, we have a problem. Come home now. I frowned. That was different. No accusations. No belittling. No condescension. A problem? Ethan peered over my shoulder, reading the messages. Well, that sounds ominous. I didn't answer. Instead, I did something I swore I wouldn't do. I responded. Me? What happened? The reply came instantly. Caroline, Jordan screwed up bad. I stared at the words, an uneasy feeling curling in my stomach. Jordan. Of course. Of course it was about him. I shouldn't have cared. Shouldn't have felt anything. But my fingers hovered over the keyboard anyway. Ethan crossed his arms. You really want to go down this road? No. But I had to know. Me? What did he do? This time, there was a pause. As if she was choosing her words carefully. Then, Caroline, he got arrested. My heart didn't sink. My breath didn't hitch. I didn't feel a damn thing. Except for maybe the smallest, pettiest sense of satisfaction. Jordan, the golden boy, the perfect son, the one who could do no wrong in their eyes. Arrested. I leaned back against the counter, tilting my head slightly as I stared at the screen. So, Ethan said, watching my expression carefully. What did he do? I exhaled through my nose, shaking my head. No idea. But whatever it is, it's bad enough that they actually need me for something. Ethan let out a low whistle. Bet that feels real nice, huh? It did. It really did. For once, they weren't dismissing me. For once, they weren't treating me like I was invisible. They were desperate. And suddenly, I had the power. I tapped out a response, my lips curling into a slow smile. Me, not my problem. I hit send. And for the first time in my life, I meant it. I put the phone down. Face down, just in case. The silence that followed was different from before. Not peaceful. Not heavy. Just charged. Like a storm hanging in the air, thick with anticipation, waiting for the next flash of lightning. I wasn't going to answer them. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Ethan was watching me, arms crossed over his chest, coffee forgotten on the counter. He didn't say anything at first, just studied my face like he was waiting to see what I'd do next. When I didn't move, didn't react, he finally spoke. That's it. I exhaled slowly. That's it. I wanted it to be it. But the truth was, my mind was already spiraling. Jordan got arrested. Those 3 words looped over and over in my head, turning themselves inside out as I tried to picture what the hell had happened. What had he done? Had he hurt someone? Gotten into a fight? Maybe a DUI? It wasn't like Jordan to get caught. He had spent his entire life being untouchable, the golden boy who could do no wrong. And now? Now he was in jail. A slow, bitter smirk crept onto my lips. So, what's the verdict? Ethan asked, leaning back against the counter. You gonna ignore them or? The phone vibrated again. I didn't need to check to know who it was. They weren't giving up. Ethan whistled under his breath. Damn. They really don't know how to take a hint, huh? I stared at the screen. The vibration stopped, then started again. I sighed and finally flipped it over. 5 new messages. I scanned through them quickly, my pulse picking up as I read. Caroline, you don't understand. This is serious. Richard, enough with this attitude. Pick up the phone. Caroline, he stole money. From the wrong people. My breath caught. Stole money? Jordan? It didn't make sense. He had everything. He didn't need to steal. But the next message made my blood go cold. Caroline, we need $10,000 for bail. My grip on the phone tightened. So that was it. That was why they were suddenly so desperate to talk to me. They needed money. My money. A sharp, humorless laugh escaped me before I could stop it. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Oh, that's not a good laugh. I shook my head, still staring at the words, as if looking at them long enough would change them. They want money, I said flatly. Ethan didn't even blink. Called it. I exhaled sharply, dragging a hand down my face. 10 grand, Ethan. They want 10 grand from me. I expected him to be surprised. Shocked, even. But he just let out a dry chuckle, shaking his head. Wow! You finally matter to them. And all it took was $10,000. It was stupid, but the word stung. Because he was right. For years, I had been invisible to them. The afterthought. The expendable one. And now? Now, when their precious son was in trouble, suddenly I was important. Not because they cared. Not because they regretted the way they had treated me. But because they needed me. A slow, seething anger coiled in my chest, tight and sharp like a spring wound too tight. I typed out a reply. So let me get this straight. You told me to leave. You made it clear I wasn't wanted. And now you want 10 grand? The response came instantly. Caroline, we don't have time for this. Just send the money. I clenched my jaw. Of course. No apology. No acknowledgement of what they had done. Just do as we say. Just like always. Ethan was still watching me. You're not seriously considering it, right? I scoffed. Hell no. But I didn't put the phone down. Because despite everything, despite knowing exactly what they were doing, a tiny, infuriating part of me still wanted to hear them say it. I wanted them to admit it. I typed another message. Say it. A pause. Then, Caroline, what? I gritted my teeth. Say what you did to me. Admit how you treated me. Say it. Silence. I imagined them sitting there, staring at their phones, hesitating. Maybe my mother's fingers hovered over the screen, debating whether it was worth it. Whether I was worth it. Then finally, Caroline, this isn't about you. My chest tightened. Of course, it wasn't. It never was. But I wasn't letting them off that easy. Then I guess this isn't about me sending 10 grand either. Silence. Ethan let out a low whistle. Damn. That's cold. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. My heart was pounding, but it wasn't fear. It wasn't regret. It was power. For once, I was the one calling the shots. For once, they were the ones waiting for an answer. Then, after what felt like forever. Caroline, fine. You want us to say it? I sat up straighter. Then came the message that I had been waiting for. Caroline, we treated you unfairly. We should have been better parents. We should have supported you. We shouldn't have let Jordan push you away. A pause. Then, begrudgingly. Richard, we were wrong. It should have meant something. It should have felt like something. But all I felt was emptiness. Because it wasn't real. It wasn't for me. It was for him. They weren't apologizing because they regretted it. They were apologizing because they needed something. Because I had something they wanted. And the moment they got it, they'd go right back to pretending I didn't exist. I let the moment stretch, savoring their silence, the way they were waiting for me. Then I typed the final message. Me, thanks for saying that. But no. I hit send. Ethan burst out laughing. Holy shit, dude. A sharp grin tugged at my lips. Then the phone rang. I stared at the screen. Dad. I let it ring. Then Mom. Ignored. Then, finally, Jordan. Ethan saw the name flash on the screen and shook his head. Oh, this should be good. I let it ring for a few seconds. Then, on impulse, I answered. Silence. Then, you think you're proving a point? Jordan's voice was low, furious. I smiled. No point to prove. Just finally listening to you. You're a selfish little. You told me no one wanted me around. I cut him off. I'm just respecting your wishes. Silence. Then a sharp inhale, the sound of teeth grinding together. I hung up. And for the first time, I felt free. I stared at the phone, still in my hand. The call ended, but the lingering weight of it pressing down on me. The silence on the other end of the line had been satisfying, a cold, calculated victory. But something in me still felt raw. Not regret. Not guilt. Just a strange, empty kind of finality. Ethan whistled low. That was brutal. I exhaled, setting the phone down on the counter like it was something foreign, something I didn't quite know what to do with. Yeah. He leaned against the table, shaking his head. And here I was thinking you'd cave. I scoffed. You don't know me that well then. He smirked. Nah, I do. That's why I thought you would. I frowned, because he wasn't wrong. A few months ago, hell, even a few days ago, I probably would have picked up that phone on the first ring. Would have listened. Would have tried to fix things. Because that's what I had always done. But not anymore. I wasn't that person anymore. The phone vibrated again. This time, I ignored it. I grabbed my coffee, took another sip, and walked toward the couch. I dropped down onto it, staring at the ceiling. Ethan flopped into the chair across from me, kicking his feet up onto the coffee table. For a few minutes, neither of us spoke. The weight of everything hung between us, unspoken but understood. Then Ethan, never one for heavy silence, finally broke it. So, what now? I sighed. What do you mean? He shrugged. I mean, you just burned that bridge to the ground. You sticking around? Leaving town? What's the plan? The plan. I should have had one. But the truth was, I hadn't thought that far ahead. I had spent so long waiting for them to care, waiting for them to see me, that I had never really planned for what came after. What did you do when the thing you had always wanted, the validation, the power, the leverage, finally happened? I had no clue. I rubbed my face, exhaling. I don't know yet. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Well, that's not ominous at all. I let out a dry chuckle. I'll figure it out. You're welcome to crash here for as long as you need, he said, voice casual but sincere. I looked at him. Yeah, he said. But I do expect you to contribute to groceries. And also, if I catch you drinking all the coffee and not making a new pot, I will kick your ass. I smirked. Noted. The phone vibrated again. Ethan shot me a look. Dude. I rolled my eyes. I'm not answering. He snorted. They really don't get it, do they? I shook my head. No, they didn't. They didn't understand that they had already lost. But they would. Eventually. I'd make sure of it. The messages kept coming. Each one more desperate than the last. I took my time reading them, letting them stew in their own panic. Richard, we don't have time for your games. Caroline, this is serious. Please, just send the money. Then, finally. Jordan, you're enjoying this, aren't you? A slow, smug smile curled at the edges of my lips. I didn't reply. I let him sit with that thought. Because he wasn't wrong. Did it make me a bad person? Maybe. But after everything they had put me through, after all the times I had been ignored, belittled, made to feel like I was nothing, I didn't care. This was my moment. And I was going to enjoy it. Ethan glanced at me from his chair. You have that look. I arched an eyebrow. What look? The evil mastermind look. I laughed. I'm not evil. You're definitely plotting something. Maybe I was. But could he blame me? I stretched out my legs, my phone still in my hand. Okay, Ethan said. I gotta know. If you're not giving them the money, what's the plan? I grinned. Making them suffer. He let out an exaggerated sigh. That's what I thought. I tapped out another message, this time to my family group chat. Me, public apology. In the chat. Admit everything you've done. Own up to how you treated me. Thank me properly. Maybe then we'll talk. Ethan stared at my phone. Oh, you're really going for maximum humiliation, huh? I shrugged. Why not? They want something from me. It's about time they actually earn it. He chuckled. Damn. Remind me never to get on your bad side. I smirked. Too late. Then I hit send. The silence stretched for an hour. An entire hour of them sitting there, reading that message, probably fuming, debating, seething over whether they would swallow their pride long enough to do what I asked. Then, a response. Caroline, fine. And then, one by one, the messages rolled in. Caroline, we treated you unfairly. Richard, we were wrong to dismiss you. Caroline, you deserved better from us. Richard, we are sorry. And finally, Caroline, thank you for considering helping us. I stared at the words. Cold. Forced. But still there. A public acknowledgement of everything they had done. Something I had waited for my entire life. I let it sit for a minute. Let them wait. Let them hold on to hope. Then, finally, I replied. Me, absolutely not. And then I muted the chat. Ethan's laugh exploded from across the room. Oh my God. I love you. I grinned, dropping my phone onto the couch beside me. They had played their hand. And I had won. The phone calls started again. Angry. Desperate. Pleading. Caroline, please, we'll pay you back. Richard, you think you're proving a point? Then, Jordan, you better pray I don't find you when I get out. That last one made me laugh. Ethan's eyes widened. Wait, what? I turned my screen toward him. He read the message, then let out a low whistle. Oof. Big talk from inmate number whatever the hell. I smirked, my fingers moving over the screen. I typed slowly, deliberately. Me, you told me no one wanted me around. I'm just respecting your wishes. Smiling face with smiling eyes. Delivered. Read. No response. And just like that, the silence was mine again. For the first time in my life, they needed me more than I needed them. And it felt good. I stared at my phone, watching the read notification sit there in the family group chat, Jordan's name lingering below it. No typing bubble appeared. No immediate comeback. Just silence. Ethan was still laughing from across the room, shaking his head as he took a sip of his coffee. Damn, man. That was cold. I smirked. They deserve it. And they did. Every ignored cry for help, every time they brushed me aside, every moment they made me feel like I wasn't enough, it all led to this. Now, they were the ones begging. Now they were the ones left unread. Another text popped up on my screen. Caroline, this isn't funny. I almost laughed out loud. I didn't reply. Ethan leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees. You're really not gonna help them? I stretched, letting the tension in my body unwind. Nope. And you're not gonna feel bad about it? I considered that for a second. Would I feel bad? Maybe. Eventually. But not today. They made their choice, I said simply. Now they get to live with it. Ethan let out a low whistle, shaking his head with a grin. Damn. Cold-blooded. I shrugged, but I couldn't stop the smirk pulling at my lips. Maybe I liked having power for once. The phone rang again. This time, I let it vibrate on the table. Ethan raised an eyebrow. You're really enjoying this, huh? I didn't answer. Because deep down, I knew the truth. I was. An hour passed, then 2, then 3. The text slowed, then stopped completely. I kept my phone face down, my body stretched out on Ethan's couch, the hum of the TV playing in the background. My fingers drummed idly against my knee as I stared at the ceiling. I had one. So why did I still feel like I was waiting for something? The phone buzzed again, breaking the silence. I ignored it at first. But then, a notification flashed. Not a text, not a call, a news alert. I frowned, sitting up and unlocking my phone. My eyes scanned the screen. Local man arrested in connection to stolen funds from private business. I clicked the article, and there he was. Jordan's mugshot. Damn. Ethan noticed my expression. What? I turned my screen toward him. His eyebrows shot up. Holy shit. I skimmed the article quickly. Jordan had stolen money from a local business owner, someone with connections, someone who wasn't afraid to make an example out of people. And from the sound of it, he was in deep. I let out a slow breath, my mind racing. 10 grand for bail? That wasn't even the real problem. The problem was who he had stolen from. And what would happen when he got out? No wonder my parents were desperate. Ethan let out a low whistle. So, still feeling good about not helping? I didn't answer. Because for the first time I hesitated. Not because I cared about Jordan. Not because I cared about them. But because I knew exactly the kind of people he had messed with. And they didn't just forget. Another message popped up. Richard, we need to talk. Now. I ignored it. Then another. Caroline, you don't understand. This is dangerous. Ethan peered over at my screen. You think they're bluffing? I shook my head. No, they weren't. But that didn't mean I was going to fix this for them. I exhaled sharply and stood up, running a hand through my hair. I need air. Ethan watched me. You good? I nodded, even though I wasn't sure. Yeah, just need a minute. The cold night air hit me the moment I stepped outside. The city hummed around me, cars passing by, people laughing in the distance. Life moved on, even when mine felt like it was standing still. I leaned against the railing of Ethan's apartment, staring down at the street below. This was it, wasn't it? The moment of power I had always wanted. I had made them beg. I had made them acknowledge me. I had made them sweat. So why wasn't it enough? Why did I still feel like something was pressing down on my chest? Because deep down, I knew what was coming next. I was going to have to make a choice. And I had no idea what the hell I was going to do. By the time I went back inside, Ethan was still on the couch, flipping through channels. He looked up when he saw me. You look like you had a full-blown existential crisis out there. I let out a dry chuckle. Something like that. He studied me for a second. You thinking about helping them? I ran a hand through my hair. I don't know. Ethan nodded, as if he had expected that answer. Then, after a beat, he asked, do you want to? I blinked. No one had asked me that before. Not what I should do. Not what was right. But what I wanted. I sat down, my elbows resting on my knees. I want them to suffer, I admitted. Ethan smirked. That's fair. But I don't want someone coming after me if Jordan screws up even worse. Ethan exhaled. Yeah, that's also fair. We sat there for a moment. Then he leaned back, arms crossed behind his head. Well, lucky for you, you have all the leverage right now. I frowned. What do you mean? He grinned. Dude, you have them exactly where you want them. If you do help, you can make them work for it. On your terms. My stomach tightened. Because he was right. I had the power now. And maybe it was time I started acting like it. I picked up my phone, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Then, slowly, I typed out a message. Me, I'll consider it. Caroline, thank you. Me, but I have conditions. A pause. Then, Caroline, what do you mean? I leaned back, a slow, dangerous smile pulling at my lips. Me, I'll help. But you're going to do everything I ask. No questions. No attitude. No acting like you're in charge. Another pause. Then, Caroline, we just need the money. I let out a short laugh. Me, then you'll do what I say. The typing bubble appeared. Then disappeared. Then appeared again. Then finally. Caroline, what do you want? I looked up at Ethan. He raised an eyebrow. You actually gonna do it? I smirked. Yeah, but on my terms. Because this time, I wasn't just going to help them. I was going to own them. For the first time in my life, I wasn't powerless. I sat there, phone in hand, staring at the message from my mother. Caroline, what do you want? It was funny, really. For years, I had been the one asking that question. What do you want from me? What do I have to do to make you care? What do I need to change for you to love me the way you love Jordan? And now? Now they were the ones waiting for an answer. I let them wait. I took my time, fingers hovering over the keyboard, letting the weight of their desperation sink in. Ethan, sitting across from me, was watching all of this unfold with barely concealed amusement. So what's the plan, evil mastermind? I smirked. They think this is just about money. He raised an eyebrow. And it's not? I shook my head. Because it wasn't. This wasn't about 10 grand. This was about power. This was about making them understand. I typed slowly, deliberately. Me. First, I want a public apology. Caroline, we already did that. I smiled. Oh, you think that was enough? Me. No, you didn't. You sent a message in a group chat. That's not an apology. That's damage control. A pause. Then, Caroline, what do you want? I leaned back, fingers drumming against the couch. Ethan, what do you think? A Facebook post? Or maybe a nice little video? Ethan snorted. Go big or go home, man. I nodded, smirking as I typed. Me, I want you and Dad to go live on Facebook. I want you to look into that camera and tell the world what you did. I want you to admit that you treated me like I didn't matter. That you chose Jordan over me. That you pushed me out and only called when you needed something. I could feel their hesitation through the screen. The typing bubble appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Caroline, that's not necessary. I grinned. There it is. The fear, the humiliation. For years, I had been the one embarrassed by them. The one ashamed. Now it was their turn. Me. Then I guess Jordan stays in jail. I dropped my phone onto the table and stretched, exhaling slowly. Let's see how long it takes. Ethan chuckled. Dude, this is next level petty. I grinned. You love it. He shrugged. I do. And honestly, so did I. 20 minutes passed. Then 30. Then, finally, a notification popped up. Ethan glanced at my phone. No way. I picked it up, opening Facebook. And there it was. A live video from my mother's account. I tapped it, and the screen filled with an image I never thought I'd see. Caroline and Richard, sitting stiffly at the kitchen table. My old house. The place I had walked away from. The place they had made clear I wasn't wanted. My mother looked uncomfortable. My father's jaw was clenched. But the camera was on. The world was watching. And then, she spoke. Her voice was thin, forced. But the words were there. She admitted it. They admitted it. That they had treated me unfairly. That they had pushed me aside. That they had made me feel like I was nothing. I felt nothing as I listened. Not joy. Not sadness. Just satisfaction. They weren't saying it because they meant it. They were saying it because they had no choice. I let the video play until the end. Until my mother, looking like she wanted to be anywhere else in the world, finally muttered, "And we're sorry." Then I ended the stream. And smiled. Ethan let out a low whistle. Holy shit. You really did it. I picked up my phone. Typed out a message. Me. Good job. Now we can talk about the money. The next few hours were a blur. They called. I didn't pick up. They texted. I let them sweat. Then, finally, when I decided I had let them suffer enough, when the power was fully mine, I called them back. My mother picked up on the first ring. Are you happy now? She snapped. I laughed. Oh, very. A sharp inhale. Then, let's talk about the money. I hummed, pretending to think. 10 grand, right? Yes, she said immediately. I could hear my father in the background, his voice low and tight. They hated this. And I loved every second of it. I tapped my fingers against the couch. Okay, I said. Here's what's going to happen. Silence. I continued, my voice calm. Controlled. I'm not giving you money, I said. You. But I will pay Jordan's bail directly, I interrupted smoothly. I'll handle it. You don't touch a cent. More silence. Then my father spoke for the first time. That's ridiculous. I smirked. Take it or leave it. You think you're in charge? I leaned back. I know I am. Because they had no other choice. And we all knew it. In the end, they agreed. They had to. I arranged the payment. Jordan was released the next day. I didn't go to pick him up. Didn't answer the call when he tried. I was done. A week passed. Then 2. And every time I saw my phone light up with their names, every time they tried to reach out, to act like things could go back to the way they were, I ignored them. Because this wasn't just about the money. This wasn't just about revenge. This was about me. Finally, for the first time, I was free. And I wasn't going back. The phone rang. Again. I sat on Ethan's couch, my legs stretched out, staring at the screen as it vibrated across the coffee table. Jordan. His name flashed on the screen like a warning, a reminder that I had done what they asked, I had paid for his bail. And now he was out. But he wasn't thanking me. He wasn't grateful. He was pissed. Ethan, sitting across from me, glanced at the phone. You gonna answer that? I exhaled through my nose, watching the screen until the ringing stopped. Nope. Ethan smirked. You really are living for this, huh? I picked up my drink, took a slow sip. I don't owe him anything. And that was the truth. I had done more than I ever should have. I had given them the only thing they had ever wanted from me, money, and now that it was over, I had no reason to pick up that call. No reason to ever talk to him again. But Jordan didn't seem to get that. Because my phone rang again. And this time, he left a voicemail. I let it sit for a moment. Ethan raised an eyebrow. You gonna listen? I sighed, setting my drink down before picking up my phone. I put it on speaker, and the second I hit play, Jordan's voice filled the room, sharp, seething, full of barely contained rage. You think you're so fucking smart, don't you? He spat. You think this means you win? Ethan let out a low whistle. Oof. He's mad. I said nothing, just let the message play. You didn't do me any favors, Jordan continued. You just got involved in something you don't understand. You think you're above this, but you're not. There was a pause, a slow inhale, before he said something that made my stomach clench. You better pray I don't find you. Silence. The voicemail ended. Ethan blinked. Damn. I locked my phone, tossing it onto the couch beside me. I should have expected that. I knew Jordan. I knew he wasn't the type to grovel or admit he needed help. I knew the second I stepped into his mess, even if it was to save his ass, he would find a way to resent me for it. Because in his mind, he was the one who should have been in control. And now I had flipped the script. Think he's actually stupid enough to try something? Ethan asked. I shrugged. Jordan talks big. That's not an answer. I exhaled. If he wants to start something, I'll finish it. Ethan nodded, rubbing the back of his neck. Yeah, I don't doubt that. But I could see the question in his eyes. Was this over? Or was this just the beginning? 2 days passed. No more calls. No more messages. For a while, I let myself believe it was over. That maybe, just maybe, they had finally gotten the message. I stayed at Ethan's place, went about my days as if nothing had happened, let myself sink into the quiet, unfamiliar peace of not waiting for something to go wrong. Until it did. It started with a knock at the door. Not a casual one. Not friendly. Hard. Sharp. Angry. Ethan and I exchanged a look. I was already on my feet before he could say anything, my gut twisting, instincts flaring up like a warning siren. Ethan stood too, moving toward the door. Want me to get it? I shook my head. I already knew who it was. I didn't need Ethan fighting my battles. I stepped forward, unlocked the door, and swung it open. And there he was. Jordan. His face was tight, his jaw clenched, his eyes burning with something dark and wild. He looked exhausted, worn down, but still full of that same goddamn arrogance that had been there since we were kids. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then he let out a short, bitter laugh. Took you long enough. I leaned against the door frame, crossing my arms. Didn't realize I was on a schedule. His eyes flickered past me toward Ethan, then back to me. We need to talk. I tilted my head. Do we? He gritted his teeth. I'm not playing, man. I exhaled through my nose, forcing a smirk. Neither am I. Silence. Jordan ran a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply. Look. I don't know what game you think you're playing, but you made a mistake. I raised an eyebrow. Oh! And what mistake was that? His eyes darkened. Getting involved. I let the words settle between us, cold and heavy. Then I smiled. I got involved? I repeated. You dragged me into this. His jaw tightened. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. You needed me, remember? You begged for my help. His nostrils flared. I never begged. I let out a short, humorless chuckle. Oh, my bad. Mom and Dad begged for you. His fists clenched. Ethan, still standing behind me, shifted slightly. His presence was solid, grounding, but he didn't intervene. He let me handle it. Because this was my fight. Jordan exhaled sharply, his fingers twitching at his sides. This isn't over. My lips curled. Yeah, it is. He took a step closer, lowering his voice. You have no idea what you've done. I held my ground. Then enlighten me. He was breathing hard now, his anger barely contained, his whole body coiled tight like he was trying not to snap. But I wasn't scared. Not anymore. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one backing down. Jordan shook his head, laughing under his breath. You always wanted to be the one in control, huh? I didn't answer. Because he wasn't wrong. His eyes narrowed. Enjoy it while it lasts. Then, before I could respond, he turned and walked away. I stood there, watching him disappear down the hall, waiting for the tension in my chest to loosen. It didn't. Not yet. Ethan exhaled behind me. Well, that was a lot. I let out a slow breath. Yeah. He tilted his head. You okay? I thought about that. I had one. I had flipped the power dynamic, forced them to acknowledge me, made them crawl. And yet, I didn't feel free yet. Not completely. Not while Jordan still thought this wasn't over. Not while he still thought he had a way to win. I clenched my jaw. No, I said finally. But I will be. And I meant it. Because this wasn't just about getting even anymore. This was about making sure they never touched my life again. And the next time Jordan tried to come for me, I'd make sure he regretted it. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even sad. For the first time in my life, I felt free. Jordan's threats meant nothing. His rage, his bitterness, his need to keep me under his thumb, it was all just noise now. Noise I could ignore. And I did. For the next few days, I lived. Not in the way I had before, where I was constantly looking over my shoulder, waiting for my family to tear me down again. No. I lived in a way that felt real. Mine. Ethan and I fell into an easy rhythm. He had work during the day, so I spent hours wandering the city, letting myself breathe in the world without the weight of them pressing down on me. I got a part-time job at a bookstore down the street. Something quiet. Simple. A place where no one knew my name, where I wasn't Richard and Caroline's disappointment, where I wasn't Jordan's shadow. I was just me. And that was enough. The messages from my family stopped. I had expected them to keep fighting, to keep pushing, but after Jordan's visit, there was nothing. No calls. No texts. No desperate attempts to make me change my mind. I wondered if they had finally given up. Or if they were just waiting. I should have been relieved. But I knew my family. And silence didn't mean peace. It meant something was coming. One evening, I was closing up the bookstore when my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. I hesitated, then answered. Yeah? A low chuckle filled the line. So you're the famous brother. I stilled. My grip tightened on the phone. Who is this? I think you know. I turned, glancing out the front window. The street was quiet, the neon glow from the shop sign casting long shadows against the sidewalk. But suddenly, the night felt colder. I swallowed. I don't have time for games. Another chuckle. Slow. Amused. Neither do I. But your brother? He made a mistake. And I'm calling to see if you're smarter than he is. I forced my voice to stay steady. I don't know what you're talking about. A sigh. Come on now. Jordan borrowed money. He didn't pay it back. And guess what? That's a problem. I clenched my jaw. Of course. I should have known. Jordan hadn't just stolen money. He had stolen from the wrong people. And now, those people were coming to collect. I already bailed him out, I said. Yeah, that was cute. But bail money isn't our money, is it? My pulse picked up. This wasn't just about Jordan anymore. They were coming for me. I exhaled slowly. I don't owe you anything. Your brother's debt is your family's debt. I forced a laugh. Yeah, well, my family made it pretty clear I'm not part of them. Silence. Then, the man on the other end chuckled. And I knew. I knew that wasn't enough. That's touching, he said. Really? But see, your name? It's on the paperwork. Your father? Put you down as the backup. I froze. What? Oh, yeah, he said. Guess Daddy Dearest didn't tell you that part. I felt like the ground beneath me had shifted, like the air had been sucked out of the room. My father had signed my name. As collateral. And now, I was the one they were coming after. I barely remembered leaving the bookstore. I walked fast, my mind racing, the city a blur around me. When I got back to Ethan's apartment, I slammed the door behind me. He looked up from the couch, raising an eyebrow. That bad? I threw my phone onto the table. Jordan's debt is my debt. He frowned. What? I ran a hand through my hair, pacing. My father put my name down. If Jordan doesn't pay, they come after me. Ethan sat up straighter, his expression shifting from concern to something sharper. Are you serious? I nodded, jaw tight. Ethan exhaled. Okay. So what does that mean? Are they? Like, expecting you to pay? I let out a bitter laugh. Oh, not just that. If I don't? I turned to face him, my voice low. They'll make an example out of me. Ethan's face darkened. You're not paying them. I scoffed. You think I have the money? You think it would stop them if you did? I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. I had played my family like a game. I had held power over them for the first time in my life. But now? Now, someone else was holding the pieces. And I was the one being played. The next morning, I made a decision. I was done running. I was done waiting for them to make the next move. So I made mine first. I went back to my parents' house. The place I had walked away from. The place I had sworn I would never return to. And when my mother opened the door, her face pale with surprise, I simply said, "We need to talk." She hesitated, glancing over her shoulder. Your father. I don't give a damn about him, I said. Or Jordan. But you? You're gonna explain what the hell you did. Her lips pressed together. I stepped inside, the air thick with the familiar weight of them. And for the first time, I wasn't the one who felt small. I was the one who held the knife now. And I was ready to make them bleed. My father was in the living room. He barely looked up from his paper when I walked in. But I didn't sit. I didn't wait for him to acknowledge me. I spoke first. You signed my name. He didn't even flinch. Good morning to you too, he said, flipping the page. I clenched my fists. Don't play with me. You put my name on Jordan's debt. He sighed, setting the paper down. And? My blood boiled. You just decided I was responsible for his shit? I demanded. He leaned back in his chair. It's just business. I laughed. Sharp. Cold. Business, I repeated. That's what I am to you. He raised an eyebrow. Isn't that how you treated us? I stared at him, my hands shaking. And I realized something. He wasn't even sorry. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't desperation. He had done this because he knew I would come back. Because, in his mind, I would always be a pawn. I exhaled slowly. Then I smiled. And I said the words that would end this. Then let's talk business. My father frowned. I'm done with you, I said. Legally. Officially. You put me in this mess? You're getting me out. His expression shifted. What? You're gonna sign me out of your lives, I continued. No more debt. No more connection. I don't want to be a part of this family. Ever again. Silence. Then, he laughed. And that was his last mistake. Because by the time I was done, I wasn't just walking away. I was leaving them with nothing. And this time, they would never touch me again.